Hey everybody, welcome back to another Bald movie. This time Jim and I saw a classic 2003 black comedy / crime film, Matchstick Men. It was directed by Ridley Scott, written by the brothers Griffin, Ted and Nicholas. If I couldn't find out what else Nicholas has been up to, but Ted went on to write the script for Ravenous, the kind of werewolf vampire Guy Pearce film, and Ocean's 11, which everyone's familiar with. I have pretty fond memories of this from the time I saw it in the theater. What did you think? Have you seen this film before? And what did you think on further reflection?
I don't know.
Nick Cage in it, I see.
Yeah, no,
you're very cagey in your response.
I have seen this one other time. Apparently almost 20 years ago, judging by the date of this movie, which shocked me.
Yep.
And I remember really, really liking it. It was maybe my first introduction to Sam Rockwell, and he plays an excellent character in this. And classic Nicolas Cage moments. I mean, it's an excellent film. This
is almost the perfect vehicle for him.
Yeah, that very quirky, like OCD, agoraphobia.
Yeah.
Like, that really lets Nicolas Cage shine.
Very distinct, odd personality. As you mentioned, this stars Nicolas Cage and Sam Rockwell. It also stars Alison Lohman, who I'm not as nearly as familiar with her work. I know that she was in the Oleander something.
White Oleander, yeah.
Yeah, Oleander. He's the guy that made wands in Harry Potter. I'm assuming she's had something to do with magical wands. She was a pretty prominent role in Big Fish.
That I have seen.
A movie that I really enjoy.
I always confuse her with Alison Pill. I kept thinking, is she in Scott Pilgrim?
Who was the other Meg from Scott Pilgrim? Whitman? Because I feel like there's some kind of triad of Lohman, Whitman, Pillman. Going on there.
Everybody in this is great. Like, Alison Lohman is fantastic. She's 24 years old in this, playing a 15-year-old, and I think she does a great job.
She really does.
She feels like a kid in this movie.
She really, they do a lot with the costuming and makeup, and her kind of natural youthful looks to sell it, because it doesn't.
Yeah, but that performance is also really good. Like, just how, impulsive she is, and just like sort of precocious and bratty.
Feels like she's on the outs with her mom, and it's pretty good. So I don't want. This movie is it's a crime drama. There's some complex plotting. I don't want to spoil it for people. If you want to go back and see one of Nick Cage's best performances, especially one that doesn't make you want to necessarily blow your brains out like some of his other Oscar-worthy turns in Leaving Las Vegas, and what was the one about the hospital, him driving a taxi or medical taxi ambulance?
Is it Better Off
Graveyard
Dead?
Shift?
That doesn't sound right.
No.
Bringing Out the Dead? Bring Out the Dead?
There you go.
Something like that, yeah.
That's it.
A Martin Scorsese film.
Yeah, this is a pretty fun watch, I think. So, with a reasonably happy ending. So let's talk about the premise. Nick Cage plays Roy and Sam Rockwell is Frank, and they're both two con men, or as this movie calls them, matchstick men. Roy's a bit older, more accomplished, well off, and cautious, and Frank is younger, hungrier, and still looking for his first big score. Roy struggles with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, which he controls through a combination of self-medication and living a life of rigid order and control. Roy, however, discovers he has a 14-year-old daughter from a previous relationship, Angela, and he decides to meet her on the encouragement of his therapist. They hit it off and they bond very quickly, but she soon discovers that Roy isn't the antique dealer that he claims to be, and not only shows an interest in learning the way of the con, but shows quite the aptitude for the work. But soon, an expensive, long-term con winds up with Ray and Angela in deep trouble as their latest mark is more dangerous than he seems. That's Matchstick Men. If you want to go see it, go watch it now. If you are here for spoilers, you're about to get spoilers. Do you know why this film is called Matchstick Men?
I had to look it up, but I do now.
It makes sense, though. What is your understanding?
So a Matchstick Man is essentially a crudely sketched character, essentially just a stick figure.
Yeah, always called them stick figures. Yeah.
Right. But then Matchstick Man is another term for that. And so these personalities, these very thin, flimsy personalities that con men dream up, the temporary disposable personalities, make them feel like matchstick men.
Gotcha.
Like stick figures.
Yeah. So that's that. What did you think of? I guess we talked about Nick Cage, and maybe we should start there with his performance, because he does a lot of interesting things as far as the way he does these verbal tics and physical tics, the way he kind of melts down when he loses his medication or when things start to go out of his control, where he feels like he's being exposed to outdoor environment. I was wondering whether, like, if this movie holds up from a depiction of mental illness standpoint. And I did some digging, and it seems like people think that this is a pretty good, both OCD sufferers, clinical psychologists think that this is a pretty good portrayal of like what it's like to live with OCD.
And he has a variety of mental
right
hang-ups or illnesses. It's not just OCD, it's agoraphobia. There's maybe a little Tourette's in there as well. I'm not sure exactly.
Anxiety.
But yeah, just a lot of stew.
You find a lot of that is they all go to, it's not, you don't just go and have OCD and everything else is fine.
Yeah.
Like that's just maybe the tip of the iceberg that you have.
Yeah. And he does, just fantastic little things in his performances. Some of them are way over the top, which, didn't strike me as bad or odd or anything. It's just, some things are less noticeable, like every once in a while he'll bark slightly, which I really liked, and then the winking that he does throughout the film is real good.
And he does the like throat clearing, the whoo, making like the whoo, whoo. It's kind of like verbal tics.
Yeah,
no, I think it's great, and they do a great job of showing like that he has a measure of control. He's taking illegal prescription medication, like that he's just self-medicating off the black market, or the gray market. But it shows that his that his world is very neat and orderly. Like he obsessively skims his pool. He is very much calm and control when he's on these phone calls with people, when we introduce them that he's doing these scams. But then when he goes to their house and someone opens up a window suddenly.
Yeah,
it's weird. That I guess that's the other thing is that the one thing I thought this movie would be kind of drug for is that there's a part in the movie where he's unmedicated. Essentially, he's taking a placebo, but it seems to be controlling the worst of his tics. And I did some digging, and I guess that's something that can happen. Like, you can control some of this stuff through therapy, through behavioral modifications, through lowering your stress or anxiety, through having, perceived greater control or fulfillment in your life. And like his daughter,
I think that's it. Yeah.
That emotional attachment was the medication,
yes.
Was essentially the therapy and the medication he was taking.
Right. As much as these are like mental conditions, and not, necessarily chemical imbalances or anything like that, they could be overcome with just a better outlook on life, less guilt in your life, a feeling of more control.
Yeah, all
of those things could contribute to making you temporarily feel better.
Yeah. This has, I think, we did a whole Super Serious Film Fest on the works of Nick Cage, and this is one of my favorite lines ever. And I couldn't remember. I clearly remember this line, but I didn't remember what movie it was until we got to it, where he's in the pharmacy and he with nothing but a blister pack of his medication. He's trying to get a prescription fulfilled.
He's desperate.
And he's cutting in line, and people are taking exception to him being this crazy person, quote unquote, causing all this chaos in the pharmacy. And he turns to one of the outraged line cutters or cuttees, and he says, the guy said, "Hey, have you ever heard of waiting in line, pal?" He goes, "Hey, have you ever heard of being drug out to the sidewalk and beaten until you piss blood?" And it's just the fucking best.
Yeah.
It's the best.
No one but Nicolas Cage gives that performance in that moment. I'm thrilled that Nicolas Cage was able to deliver that line.
Yeah, I was actually surprised when I looked up, because one of the last things I do in a Bald movie review, especially if we're talking about classics, is I go through and look and see what old Roger Ebert had to say. As we move forward in time, that'll be less and less an available reference. But he had a 4-star review for this film, which I thought that was, he considered this an Oscar-winning performance, one of his best. And he had this paragraph where he says, Nicolas Cage is accused of showboating, but I prefer to think of him as swinging for the fences. Sometimes he strikes out and he cites Gone in 60 Seconds, which I'm not sure I agree with.
He doesn't really go for it in that movie either.
Yeah.
Does he?
I don't know. I mean, I could see him. He's loaded with a whole bunch of colorful characters. You got
But I don't think he has any lines like piss blood.
Maybe not.
Yeah, they'll talk about Vampire's Kiss if you want to talk about swinging for the fences and missing.
There you go. But he says far more often he connects. And he says parenthetically, he took enormous risks in leaving Las Vegas, bringing out the dead, and adaptation. He has a kind of raging zeal that possesses his character. What another actor would be overacting is with Cage a kind of fearsome intensity. There's an Oscar nomination here for him. I bet Cage would agree with that. His lizard shaman connection he has with the material. So he's great. I thought he has really good chemistry with Sam Rockwell. Like, you get their relationship within the 60 seconds of them interacting.
You do, but at the same time, you're sort of puzzled as to why these two ended up together, because they don't give you a lot of backstory on the two, right?
That's right.
You don't know how they connected or why.
Yeah, how long they've been working together.
None of that stuff. And they're so different. Like, you would think that the patterns and habits of Sam Rockwell, his character Frank, would drive Roy insane. Because he's already got these mental issues that he's dealing with. And Sam Rockwell is just the sloppiest person. It's not Sam Rockwell. Frank is the sloppiest person on the planet.
Yeah.
I mean, he has no respect, no care, no nothing when he comes into Roy's house, and Frank says, "Oh, you're gonna I'm gonna take my shoes off, no problem." Then he walks right straight into his living room. He might as well be eating a big sloppy hamburger and dripping ketchup everywhere. Like,
I wonder if it's something about the fact that, like, it does seem that Roy has to have a lot of control, and the fact that he's working with a very I guess he's junior to him. They don't seem like there's that much of a difference in age, but maybe he's just had more experience doing these cons. But, like, Frank has a certain respect for him and his natural ability, and he's used to the weirdness that his different mental illnesses bring to the table.
But he doesn't make any accommodations for it either.
I don't know. Well, I mean, that's the thing where it's like he does, but then you realize that this was just a con. Like, it does seem like it does seem like maybe he could have done a little bit better when they're out scamming that old couple and the door gets opened. Maybe if Sam sees what's happening, he can kind of be like, "Hey, could you mind shutting the door? It's I
got allergies."
Yeah, I've got a bad. Yeah, like you see your partner's freaking out and starting to twitch and tweak, then you jump in there and be the distraction or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but now that you say that, actually, that this is all part of the con, I'm going, oh, yeah, duh, of course.
Well, that's the question I have
he's pushing him toward these symptoms, right? So he'll go to the shrink. So he'll, like, go down this road that they want him down.
When do you think that they decided, when did Sam Rockwell come up with this idea? Because after I watched it, I thought there's a moment early on in the film where Sam Rockwell tries to sell him on a long-term con.
The boat guy or whatever.
And Nick Cage says, "Nope, I don't do long-term cons. They're too dangerous." I think that's where he decided, well, then I'm going to scam you.
Yeah, I think so. There was so much money at stake, and you can see that Frank needs it. Roy doesn't, right? Roy's got stash, a huge stash in a safety deposit box.
Yeah.
But Frank needs it, and I think Frank's pushing him, and the fact that he doesn't want to do it sort of drives Frank to con him.
And Sam Rockwell is essentially playing... Sam Rockwell's got a lot of different facets, but there is a very broad Sam Rockwell gear that he plays, like in think of his Charlie's Angels character. And that's pretty much what he's doing. He's being Sam Rockwell.
He is, yeah. Before we leave Nick Cage, I wanted to talk a little more about how he commits to this role, because there's so much, we mentioned the barking, we mentioned the piss blood, but there's just so many little things as well, where like he's in this makeshift hospital room, right? And he's being conned, and he comes out and he's running across the roof of this parking garage with his bare ass just hanging out, and this stupid little pointy hat thing. He has no shame in those moments. And when he's in the laundromat with Alison Lohman, with Angela, and he's got this ridiculous getup with this fedora, this like, I don't even know what it is, like a straw fedora or something, and these glasses and this patterned shirt. Like Nicolas Cage is willing to go just about anywhere. And we saw that in like The Weatherman, where we were talking about Nicolas Cage's remarkable ability to take food items to the face without flinching.
Yeah.
I just have such a keen appreciation of Nicolas Cage and what he is willing to do, even when it misses now. I need to go back and watch Mandy after having done a little more research on Nick Cage and see if that recontextualizes anything for me.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Mandy. Oh, I also just saw, speaking of Nick Cage in the news, The Color Out of Space.
Oh, that's the follow. That's the director's follow up.
I don't. It's not the same director. I think it's the same maybe production company, which is probably half Nick Cage anyway. Okay, but it's a classic H.P. Lovecraft tale.
Oh boy,
and it's excellent. It's excellent. It's I think it's got a lot of the same kind of aesthetic choices as Mandy, but without like some of the things that kind of drove you nuts about it. Yeah. It's a much more restrained Nick Cage performance. Going back to Matchstick Men, I think one of the things that makes the script really interesting and propels it is it's not unconventional morality. Like I feel like this film really buys into the idea that like that Nick Cage, while he sees himself as being this kind of like, hey, I'm not a criminal, I live by a code, I don't steal from people give me things. Yeah. But then they show that like, you know, he's really exclusively preying on old people, at least in the beginning of the movie. Yeah. It kind of belies it, you know, like I don't know that an old person that thinks they've won a major award is being greedy, you know? Like, no, you win a sweepstakes, that doesn't take advantage of someone's greed. Like they weren't.
No, I think he sees stupidity as a vice or gullibility as a vice. That's reasonable to exploit. Yeah. That's almost ethically neutral to exploit.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that philosophy at all. Yeah. But yeah, the movie hinges on that statement, right? Like I don't steal from people. They give me things.
Right.
They give their money to me.
And I thought I was really impressed by how they play that out through the end. You know,
all the way to the end.
When you go to the end and you see that kind of like 1 year later, you think that there's going to be maybe some kind of syrupy resolution or some kind of like hugging, but it's not. Or
the cops are going to be called and come in and bust the con person because she deserves it.
Nope.
No, Nick Cage deserved it.
Yeah.
In his mind, like Roy very much lives by that philosophy. And even when it's him giving things away, getting conned, he still lives by that philosophy.
And that's the thing. It's like, I think this movie works best on a first watch when you don't know the twist is coming, because now that I knew the twist is coming, it seemed like it was telegraphed. And when I first saw this as a much younger man, I was like 25, 26, hadn't seen nearly as many twisty films as I have now. I was up until he staggers out of that makeshift room into the parking garage roof. I had no idea what the fuck was going on. But having that hindsight and going back and watch it, the script has tons of signs and foreshadowing and flashing like warning signs that he's about to be scammed. In fact, every word of wisdom that he gives to his daughter, Allison, is itself something he should be listening to, because he's like at one point he's talking about the rules and he's like, you know, and one thing you got to make sure is you're not being scammed by the person you're scamming. And how he knew nothing about her, and she had carefully constructed this narrative and took advantage of the fact that he would rather die. He's physically incapable of calling and talking to his ex-wife. Yeah. And that she's got a kind of a strained relationship. So like, oh, if her car's not there, then
in those moments where he's like, oh, I'll take you home, I'll drop you off. Like, oh, should we call your mother to come get you? she's always pushing back on that, saying, no.
Which he thinks is charming and independent and
Right.
all that, but also she's putting him off.
Yeah, it always has like some form of believable cover. Because like you said, there is that strained relationship. There is, maybe she's sneaking out to see him, right?
Yeah.
And his ex doesn't know that. And
Yeah.
she might get in trouble for it. He doesn't want to get his daughter in trouble, so he doesn't do it. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of good stuff.
Well, that's why I think it's just such an ethically tight scam, because at a couple points in the film, I'm thinking, do I feel sorry for Nick Cage? And the film never asks me to, and the film never does.
No.
Like watching it the second time through, it's a I had a little bit more pity to him just because he is so not prepared for what's happening to him, and he's really investing like, you know, body, heart, and soul into this relationship that's flim flam. But it's no worse than anything he's doing to, I don't know, maybe it's worse. Maybe like he didn't go to any of these old people and say, I'm your long lost kid. But still.
Yeah, I mean they're preying on the same gullibility that he does. The same desires. You know, everybody's got something that they really want, and if you can offer them that, even if it's a fake offering, they might be blinded enough to not see it.
Yeah, and I like that 1 year later, Denouement is very good at showing that he's learned something from this. Like, he's actually grown as a person.
Yeah.
He had millions of dollars and all these stuff socked away from all of the scams he's pulled his entire life. He loses the whole thing, and now he puts his what is obvious natural talent and salesmanship to work at a carpet warehouse.
Yeah.
And he's earning a very modest living with this grocery store clerk that he's had this kind of weird on again, off again OCD type relationship with. But it feels like he's, you know, buckled down, probably got some therapy, gotten on a legal, legit prescription therapy, and he's better now.
This is one of those movie storybook endings, right? That's like too happy to actually believe, because if you recall, the reason that his ex and him broke up, he says he left her with a black eye and a bun in the oven. And if you look at the scenario he's in at the very end of this, his grocery store clerk,
that's
wife, possible wife, has a bun in the oven right now, right? They
Uh-huh.
make a big show of it where he leans down and practically like kisses her stomach. It's one of those things where you have to believe that this man has changed after this single incident. I don't think I would believe that if this wasn't a movie. I would be looking for the backslide. I would be looking for him to slip back into his old life, right? Get a whiff of like a con that's too juicy to pass up. Get a little angry, get off his meds or something. He drops him down the drain and beats his wife, and they break up again. Like, there are so many ways this could go wrong.
Man,
if
I
this
didn't catch
wasn't
the
a
black
movie.
eye. Like, that's, yeah, you're right. That's,
He's
that's
an
pretty
abuser.
dark. Yeah.
I mean, Roy's not a great guy by any stretch of the imagination. Leave aside the con man stuff. He's clearly just a bad man at the beginning of this film.
Yeah, I wonder. Although I guess the other side of that argument is, how much further to rock bottom do you fall than to be completely every aspect of your flawed personality taken advantage of over a long-term con to defraud you of millions of dollars.
And in a movie, this totally works.
Yeah.
It's a really, really good, tight ending, I think.
Yeah. How big was the scam? You had Sam Rockwell, you had Alison Lohman, you had I forget,
Bruce Altman.
Bruce Altman as
Who plays Terry Colby in Mr. Robot. I immediately recognized him. I was like, oh shit, that's the horrible CEO or whatever of, not CEO, but whatever.
Wasn't it?
I don't think he was the CEO, because Philip was the CEO.
Was he the CTO?
He might have been the
Originally
CTO. No, that might have been Tyrell. I don't know.
I think he took over. Well, anyway, it's Mr. Robot. Who cares? But yeah, you're right. That is that guy.
Yeah.
And then this other guy who, he's been on a lot of stuff. He plays this kind of like chubby, sweaty businessman / gangster.
It's one of those guys that I've seen in a lot of things, but I couldn't name a single thing.
Yeah. I thought the scam itself was really, really good. You know, where they, like, Nick Cage poses as this kind of like posh, perhaps English, you know, financier or money exchanger. What would you call that?
Yeah,
International finance guy.
Launderer.
Yeah.
Is essentially what he's doing.
And is that what he's? Because like I wasn't sure if it was it's actually laundering money or if there was a conversion, like a currency conversion loophole. Like
they do mention that.
Yeah,
and I'm not certain either.
Maybe, but the thing that I thought they do so well is that they emphasize that the con, the most effective con, is the one that the person talks themselves into. Mm-hmm. You know, that you, like him and Sam Rockwell are sitting at the bar and they're sliding envelopes full of money, and you hear this guy talking about, you know, for currency exchange and stuff, and this other guy who has money is like, oh, how can I make more of it? They hook themselves. You know, you don't have to, like, the less you have to lead to them, the better it is. And they do that really good on Better Call Saul. Although Saul's a little bit more white hat, at least the seasons I've seen, because he does tend to try to take advantage of people's greed and obnoxiousness.
Oh, yeah.
In a way that, like, you know, I feel like Nick Cage's character, Roy, is taking advantage of people's kind of guileless and innocence. But yeah, no, the when do you remember when you first saw this, when you saw the scam, the big scam, or did you?
I don't think it was till the end.
Yeah.
Till they reveal that, like, he's not in a hospital. Like, this time around, I noticed, this hospital looks like bullshit. This looks like a trailer. Like, it's got drop walls, if that's a thing. Like, the same material they're using for drop ceilings on the walls. No hospital has that.
Yeah.
Not in America, at least. Yeah, the first time I saw it, I was blown away by it.
Oh, that is it. So I was trying to think about how big the scam is, because you had, you know, so you got Alison Lohman, you got Sam Rockwell, you got the other dude we don't know, we got the therapist, you got these two FBI agents, you've got the therapist office, and you've got this cargo. This is a pretty expensive scam. Like, I wonder how many millions of dollars you're supposed to understand that Nick Cage has. I'm thinking, I don't know, 3 to 5.
Trying to make a tax joke here. It's not working.
No, I'm not making a tax joke.
No, I'm trying to.
Oh, you're trying to make a tax
working,
joke.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question. I couldn't tell how rich he was, right? He pulls 80 grand out of that lockbox at one point.
Right.
And it didn't seem to diminish it all that much. So there has to be at least $1 million. And that would be in pounds or euros. I'm not sure which those were.
Yeah.
Had the queen on them, probably pounds.
I looked up something. I can't remember why I looked this up as some kind of thought experiment, but like a 12 inch by 12 inch by 12 inch cube of cash is roughly $1 million if they're $100 bills bound up in the, like, you know, $10,000 bundles.
I love that scene where he opens the briefcase and he's like, that's 80 grand. That looks like a lot less. And he says it always does.
Yeah.
Because I think it would. Be like, oh, I'm getting $100,000 and it's 4 bundles of bills.
Yeah, no,
for 25 each. I'm like,
Yeah, I had once 10 grand in my hand in $100 bills, and it just doesn't feel.
It's not satisfying.
Yeah, you feel like you put a rubber band around that and you can just, you know, go to Vegas and have, but it's not. It doesn't got that satisfying, thick, softball sized.
You got to roll it.
Yeah,
I mean that's what the drug dealers do, right? Is they roll their money
or fold it.
Makes it feel a lot more substantial. So there's one moment in here where I caught on to what a bad fucking idea this is. And it's when he, speaking of the lockbox, takes his daughter into the lockbox, the deposit area, and puts her onto his account. And I'm thinking all she needs now is a passcode and you're fucked. That was before I remembered that this was all a long con to steal that very money.
Oh, the second time
the second time through.
Forgotten. Okay.
I'd forgotten almost all of it. It's been almost 20 years.
Okay. Because I was surprised how much I remembered beat by beat.
I only remembered that this was a long con after, like, when he woke up in the hospital. I was like, oh, right, this hospital is bullshit. None of this is real. It was all a con. But in that moment, I'm thinking, God, it's such a bad idea to give this 14-year-old girl access to $1 million, whether she's your daughter or not.
Right.
He just puts her on the list for no reason. Like, she doesn't give him that much of a puppy dog look. She just is there and he feels obligated.
Oh, well, I think that you're supposed to understand that, like, this is a con he's talking himself into. She is his spitting image, and they're getting along like gangbusters, and now he's gone from like giving her, because they go through all these phases. She goes through the like, I was out too late and came home, and like, where have you been, little late? Like, they had to do all that stuff so that he kind of at some point starts seeking her approval and wants to be seen as cool and a value in her eyes. And I think that's how, like, she didn't take the money from him. He gave it to her. And just like he says at the end of the film.
It's such a long shot, too. Like, this long con is a long shot.
That's what I was trying to think of. Like, because if Nick Cage doesn't drop his pills down the incinerator, which Sam Rockwell had no idea. I mean, maybe it's one of those things where he was just waiting. Like, he knows this guy. He's going to have a meltdown, and I'm going to come in there. Maybe it's something he's been grooming him for a long time. Maybe I'm wrong about the turn down being that this was always in the back of his mind. Like, next time he fucks up his medication, I'm going to be in there. But the logistics escape me.
Yeah, you've got to say that, okay, this relationship with his daughter is going to bring him out of his OCD and his mental issues long enough to want to do this long con that he says he's never wanted to do and never going to do. You have to get him to change his mind on that, which means you've got to fix his symptoms of his mental problems.
And you have to have the doctor ready to go. Like, he's got to be able to take a phone call, and he's got to show up at his office at a moment's notice.
I mean, it's such a long shot.
Yeah.
But I guess at any moment, like, he discovers what's up, and so what? You tried, you failed, no big deal.
Well, I also wonder, like, how improvised things were. Like, did he have Alison Lohman all planned from the beginning, or did he say, hey, go to this therapist, get you on some kind of bullshit medicine, and then we're going to find whatever the leverage is? And it turns out that, like, this relationship with his ex-wife and the kid is the one that they thought, oh, that's the one.
Yeah.
Because, like, I was just thinking, like, also it's kind of like a rocket launch, and that you've got stage one, he's got to go to the therapist. If that doesn't work out, there's no stage two. If stage two works out, then you got to go find your rope guy who's going to be the one that hauls him in. You go find, it's like, then you don't need the FBI guys until it's time to set the trap. I wonder how much of it was like a plan as you go, and how much of it was just like an Ocean's 11 style. All right, we've got our Betty White, and we've got our Greta Garbo, and we've got an Ella Fitzgerald, and we got all these guys put together. It is interesting to see that this guy went on to write Ocean's 11, because Ocean's 11 is just a slicker, less OCD version of this.
Yeah.
With no kid. It's you're trying to steal the affection of Julia Roberts back, I guess.
I want to talk a little bit about the making of the film.
Okay.
Maybe we can talk about Ridley Scott. But I want to talk about the budget of this film.
Yeah. So Ridley Scott. What's your opinion of Ridley Scott's work?
I love his work. I mean,
I do
he's
too.
the guy who directed Alien and Blade Runner and Prometheus. You may not
There's
like the movie, but the direction
modern missteps. But yeah,
the direction is great. I mean,
how would you? Because I tried something out that didn't seem like you were buying, which is that he's like a upscale or a rich man's version of Michael Bay. Because he has a lot of the same kind of techniques and loves the magic hour and certain type of like heroic angles and shots. It's just,
if you can divorce, I'd be interested to see what Ridley Scott with Jerry Bruckheimer could do. Because I get Michael Bay and Jerry Bruckheimer so tightly linked in my mind.
They were tightly linked for a long time. Yeah.
I know it's hard to separate them. And Jerry Bruckheimer is the boom explosion Transformers guy, right?
Well, I think he's just the production partner for Michael Bay, and then they split up.
All right. This doesn't help me at all.
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to have them forever linked in my head. I couldn't tell you the difference between Michael Bay and Jerry Bruckheimer, in all honesty.
But you could tell me the difference between Michael Bay and Ridley Scott.
I think Ridley Scott's movies are smarter. Maybe he makes better choices.
That's what I'm saying. He's a rich man's
chooses.
version of Michael Bay, where Michael Bay is a dumb man's version of maybe Ridley Scott. Maybe it's a remove wealth. This is just intelligence. Yeah. Anyway, you're talking about the production of this, and Ridley Scott's over.
I when I was listening to this movie, I mean listening because I want to talk about the soundtrack, I kept hearing song after song after song that is very well known, extremely popular by well-regarded artists, with the exception of Kid Rock. 2 Frank Sinatra songs in this movie.
Yeah, Bobby McFerrin.
No, that's the Don't Worry Be Happy guy. It is a Bobby, but it also has Kid Rock. Kid Rock's most well-known song. It has Wayne Newton's most well-known song.
Bobby Darin, yeah, right.
Bobby Darin. It has so many big, and the score is created by Hans Zimmer. So like, when you're not using licensed music, you're paying one of the best guys in the industry.
Right.
This movie had a $65 million budget. This is a very unambitious movie for $65 million.
That's true.
Or sorry, $62 million. It made in the box office worldwide $65.5 million.
That's the shocking thing.
Barely made its money back.
And probably didn't by the time you factor in production cost or marketing, all that kind. I was honestly shocked. I was shocked it was that expensive.
Yeah. That's really expensive for this kind of movie.
Because this is like a big budget indie film. And it's in terms of scope and like the cast.
It's like if Broken Flowers cost $62 million. Yeah, people would have lost their shit.
Yeah, there's like 8 speaking roles in this fucking film. There's no special effects or pyrotechnics of any kind. No stunt work.
Nope. I mean, even the effects work they do is very minor. You know, it's understated. It's not. There are no big explosions, a la Michael Bay and or Jerry Bruckheimer. It's all like, oh, here's a woozy camera effect when he wakes up, right? Here's like a slow zoom and some saturation when they open the patio door.
Right, yeah.
Nothing super fancy, nothing hugely ambitious, but $62 million.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Now, I bet that most of that went to the music and the acting talent, if I had to guess.
Probably, because those were big names. Even, you know, Nicolas Cage and Sam Rockwell were pretty big. Maybe not so much Sam Rockwell, because I think at this point he had been in like Charlie's Angels for sure.
Was he in Moon at this point? Was that like 2000?
I couldn't tell you. It's around there.
Yeah.
But Nicolas Cage was like coming off of his like mega hit, like Bankable Star,
right?
Con Air,
Face Off,
The Rock. Like he was at the height of his commercial powers.
Yeah. There's one other thing I want to talk about before I'm kind of out of things to talk about with this movie, and it's the pacing and the structure of this movie.
Okay.
Because I think it's really strong. And you mentioned Roger Ebert's review earlier, and he noticed the same thing, where he says, basically, you've got a plot that's really exciting with this con, and when you cut away from it, there's a better, almost a better plot to cut to, which is the daughter-father bonding thing here, which, you know, turns out to be a ruse, but it doesn't matter when you're watching it.
Right.
And I felt the very same thing. I was thinking throughout this movie, man, I'm really invested in seeing this con, but they're kind of spooling that out through the course of the movie. And I think that's the genius of it, is it keeps you engaged on every level. It keeps you engaged emotionally with these characters when you see this father who's, you know, estranged from his daughter and they're trying to reconnect. But it also keeps you intellectually engaged with the plot as they're able to seamlessly cut back and forth between those two things. And the plot portion of this is such a like slow boil, that it gives the rest of the movie time to breathe and time to work its magic on you. Yeah.
I was trying to think when I was organizing my notes, is this a traditional like kind of 3-act structure, or is it a 5-act structure, or is it 3-act with a prologue and epilogue structure? Because there is something kind of unconventional about that Russian nested doll or snake eating its own tail aspect of, you've got the con, which is just on the face of it kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
You've got the man, but beneath that, you got the layer of the man struggling with OCD and various, debilitating mental and emotional problems. And then on top of that, you've got like the father trying to reconnect with his daughter in light of all the other problems he's got. And, trying to compartmentalize, and those compartments break down, and how does he feel about it? And he feels like that was the other kind of tension, is he swings between feeling like he's like a deadbeat dad to being a good dad to like, oh God, I'm a criminal dad. What does that look like? I got a criminal daughter.
Yeah.
That stuff all really works well. Mm-hmm. So that'll do it for this week's Bald Movie. We want to talk about a change in format that's going to be hopefully brief. We're supposed to see A Quiet Place Part 2 next week, But we just had some confirmed cases of coronavirus here in Ohio, and things are kind of still up in air about how bad this is. I mean, there's entire countries under quarantine right now.
They just declared a state of emergency here.
Yeah, so we're going to kind of opt. We are fortunate enough that we don't have any disease vectors in our life. We have a very small office that is isolated from people. We sit 12 feet apart from each other. My biggest vector for disease is my son. It's entirely possible. Some schools have already announced that they're shutting down. The point is, we don't want to sit in a theater full of 500 people coughing to see some movies. So for the foreseeable future, for the interim, we're going to not be covering first run Bald movies. We're going to exclusively be going over some movies, and we're going to pay particular attention to maybe some things we missed in this last award season. So next week, in lieu of A Quiet Place Part 2, we're going to see Martin Scorsese's The Irishman, his Netflix joint that he did with De Niro and Pacino and all those big names. I have been wanting to see this for a long, long time. It's a very intensive movie. Ask to sit and watch a 3 hours, 45-minute movie.
It's long. It's Titanic length.
Yeah, but I'm in for it. I've been excited to see this. I'm really looking forward to it. We're going to be covering it next week on Bald Movies, and we'll play it by ear. I mean, a lot of these movies are getting pushed, it seems like. They've already announced that James Bond is going to be pushed to November, and I understand it's entirely because of the coronavirus.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they'll push Black Widow. That could be tough for Marvel.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're the ones that could...
in something that's so tightly scheduled.
Yeah, but on the other hand, if it's a movie that could make $1 billion worldwide, that's exactly the type of thing that you want to push, because do you want to have do you want a coronavirus be called the Black Widow virus, the Disney virus?
Yeah.
It's fucking rats, man. They carry the plague, and Mickey's no exception. Goddamn rat out of Orlando is going to kill us all. So yeah, that's our plan to kind of hunker down. Maybe it's an overreaction. Maybe we can all laugh about it in a month or two, but we're playing safe rather than sorry. And that's what we're going to be doing in the weeks ahead. So thanks for stopping by and listening to this Bald Movie. If you'd like to support us and the work that we do here, it's real easy. Go to club.baldmove.com, and when we get these first run movies back, you'll be enjoying the fruits of that labor, because that's one of the main features, spoiler-filled reviews of first run movies. We'll be back next week with The Irishman. Until then, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Jim.
See ya.